Well, we're certainly in for a bit of a doozy this time. Yes, if you didn't notice the length. Well, it doesn't have so much to do with the area this time, as we'll be getting to the boss a little bit later. And that's gonna take a while. But welcome to Caves 3. It's like the first two caves areas, except it's the third one. Okay, to be more specific, it kind of has a more mechanical feel to it than the first two, since we're kind of getting into the spot that I guess the Pioneer one haven't had a bit more to deal with, but overall it's still pretty similar in terms of what we're going to be winding up facing. Sure, it mixes it up a little bit, so it's not going to be entirely the same, but for the most part it will be. There will be another new enemy type that we'll encounter, just like the previous two, but for now, just go ahead and deal with the usuals. And hey, in case 3, there's actually a chance of coming up against the new weapons as well, but yeah, here's the new enemy type. This is the Pan Arms. When you first start the game, there's not going to be a whole lot that you can actually do to Pan Arms, as, well, they're only really vulnerable to spells. And if you're a droid, the most you really have to do to them is use your traps. This makes you wonder, how are you supposed to damage them? Well, eventually they actually split apart, and this heavily lowers their defense, allowing you to take out the two pieces individually. Now, you don't really want to actually let the individual pieces attack you, as the kind of orange one will actually hurt you considerably, and the purple one actually debuffs you, which is a big problem with this early on, because you don't really have the tools necessary to get rid of those debuffs. That said, it's not much of a debuff, so it's not too worrisome. And on higher difficulties, you'll probably be carrying around the items necessary to remove the debuffs, but, you know, they're not terribly threatening enemies, they're just time-consuming. So the way Caves 3 usually tends to be laid out is you'll have two very distinctly split-off paths. One of them will usually lead you to the boss rather quickly, whereas the other's going to have you running around in circles for a while. God dang it, there's another there. So there's a possibility that I'll be playing on a bit of a less silly server for the future videos. Also because I think the other one I've been playing on is a little bit more stable. This has been an interesting series, to say the least, with how spread out my recording sessions are in terms of server stability. But this is what happens when you're dealing with a very old game that only has third-party servers left. Oh, I mean, you'll encounter the most enemy types here in Caves 3, but for the most part, a lot of them aren't even all that threatening, so no real big deal. A little trick to trap hallways like this is if you pause the game, or, you know, bring up your menu or anything else that causes you not to target the traps, you can usually just run right through because your character won't slow down when they're approaching their targeted thing. It's something that can actually exploit a lot of different things. It's just that there's often a lot of obstacles where your lock-on causing you to slow down is a big problem. So just popping up the weapon menu or anything will help out a lot. But make sure to remember this trick, because it comes in handy in a lot of dangerous situations too, especially during certain bosses. Ah, Pan Arms, forever the time waster. At least they're not too evasive, so the sword's doing a pretty decent job just cleaving through the two of them at the same time. But yeah, they really do just waste a lot of time since you need to wait for them to split apart first. Pan Arms do show up again in a later stage in the game, but they actually learn from the stupidity of their high defense the first time, so they're actually much easier to take out when they're combined. So that's nice, at least. I mean, they're not much of a problem for anything that's good at spellcasting, but even with force types, this early on in the game, you barely have any TP to work with, so even just casting a few castings of Floyd really chews through the bar, to say the least. We'll be seeing just kind of how painful playing as a Force is later, since I do have them planned to go through one of the other episodes of this game. In the meantime, we'll just keep on feeding on the mag here. It's nice to actually have this thing handy for once, but see, yeah, it's still pretty young. They can get up to level 200, so they can really give you one heck of a stat boost. Well, hey, regular Lily for once. Who would have thought? portions of Caves 3 tends to be locked behind a 4-person door, so if you're playing in multiplayer mode with anything less than that, chances are you'll be missing out a little bit. But if you're playing single-player mode, you can open these doors by yourself anyways, so it's not too much of an issue. Exploring entire maps isn't too bad of an option when you're stuck on normal mode, since you'll get a bit more XP, but at the same time, there's faster ways to grind, so it just really depends on what sort of experience you're going for. If you're trying to be super min-maxy and, like, optimizing everything, then go for it. Otherwise, don't bother. I can only wonder why they bothered having a laser gate right there for this healing ring. You know, I mean, it's right there. It just feels like a waste of time. Oh well. And as you can see, the nano dragons are starting to pop back again. They mostly stick around in these big open rooms, since they have a lot of space to actually take out other enemies. They're still not terribly threatening, though. Honestly, the only move that they have that can really be a threat is their homing laser thing. The regular laser's fine, but the homing fireball that they shoot is kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. Especially in later difficulties, where it just hits you for a ton of damage. It's combining all of our favorite enemy types from the earlier bits of caves, by which I mean not so favorites, because these slimes also... See, that's the thing about this area, and why caves isn't generally remembered so well. Aside from having kind of dull music, yeah, and not the most exciting thing to look at, it's also responsible for things like nano dragons and polyfluid slimes and pan arms, all of which specialize in wasting your time. I can kind of understand the hatred. Oh well. Speaking of pan arms, here's another one now. Yay, let's go deal with the other enemies first. Now, if I do move back over to the server that I started this whole thing on, I'm going to be a much lower level than what's coming out of this particular run. Because, to say the least, the triple DXP values kind of gets a little bit silly. I think it might even be ×5 now on the server that I was playing on. Dear God. I mean, that's not a bad thing. This is a game where, you know, levels don't really matter too much, but getting to the maximum level does take absolutely forever, so a bit of extra EXP doesn't hurt, to say the least. Oh. But yeah, Cave 3 actually, despite having this big split-off path, isn't even all that big. It's actually pretty quick to go through. There's not very many key rooms or anything like that, since everything looks generally the same. But it's at least interesting in its own right. The slot's a good example of the better gear that you start finding in Caves 3. This one's actually the next step up in terms of slots, and on top of that, it's actually a ++ variety, which is another thing I can talk about right now. So, the slots in this game, other than the rare ones, actually have a chance of either having +++ or minus and minus, all of which affect how much of a boost you actually get from the slot. Now, it's one of those things. Rare slots are all you're going to be using once you get to a certain point, so it's mostly irrelevant. But in the earlier stages in the game, having the ++ parts are actually kind of nice. In this case, I think it gives us an extra 2 attack power with that slot compared to what it normally gives, so that's pretty cool. Oh, looks like I missed a pan arms in there. Go back past me. You can do it. You can take out this time-consuming monstrosity. Go, go, go! Now, considering the boss that we're going to be coming up against, I really would have preferred finding a better weapon in this zone as opposed to just slots. Yes, me, that's productive use of waiting for this thing to split. But yeah, finding a level 2 weapon, something above the standard green weapons, helps out a lot when you're taking on the boss of this zone. I don't know why it has so much HP for something in normal, but we'll take it out one way or another, but it will be kind of hard on the supplies. Aspie, what are you doing? Just get going. Don't get stuck on the wall. Get moving. So now we finished the right branching path, we can start on the left. That said, there was still another branching path that we missed later on the stage on the right-hand side as well, but they all kind of combine in their own way anyways, so we'll see that a little bit later. You know, Pasby, you can notice the brand that you picked up any time now. Okay, so the brand is the next step up of the saber line, so the second level weapons are actually colored blue. So whenever the heck I actually pull that thing out, you'll be able to see it. But for now, we're going to be sticking with the sword, I guess. No, come on, you can realize it eventually. No, we're just gonna use the dagger? Okay. That said, the saber-type weapons are technically some of the weakest anyways, so it doesn't matter too much. That's the problem. Even later on in the game, you don't really want to use something that only hits 3 times unless it's a multi-hitting weapon. And by multi-hitting, I mean hitting multiple people. It's good English to me, but anyways. So in Cave 3 you can start seeing these level 2 weapons, and it would be really important to actually get the level 2 sword right about now. Because, yeah, multi-hitting is what we're going to be needing a lot for the boss. Right now, though, we're going to be actually meeting up with the other branching path that I didn't do on the right-hand side. So this is kind of the middle path, I guess, of Caves 3. Honestly, this map layout is pretty much how all of them work, where you have 3 distinct paths to go through, and there'll be 2 dead ends that teleport you back to the start, and 1 that'll send you to the boss. So hopefully we'll get something out of this next dead end. Oh, did I finally see it? Yeah, there it is. It looks exactly the same, except it's blue. That's just how it works. Just wanted to see if I could actually damage it with that. Oh, maybe someday. I mean, we are horribly overleveled at this point, I guess. Mostly has a lot to do with all those Gnarlilies showing up, because they were so much EXP. Whatever works. Oh, come on, Pan-Arms, please! I mean, the door opened ages ago, and it just keeps on spawning more enemies after the Pan-Arms I keep killing. Is that the last batch yet? Yes? Okay, good. So now we can actually move towards the end of this branching path, as this tends to be the last room of this batch. Other than at least a little bit of a treasure room of sorts, since that's the whole point of taking the branching paths in the first place, is chance at getting something. In later difficulties, branching paths and everything don't matter as much, just because all your equipment's going to come from enemy drops, as opposed to boxes for the most part. But that's going to be covered much later on, to say the least. Either way, though, it's more EXP, so let's go ahead and see if we can get one more level up before that boss. And the game likes to pull tricks like this, too. If you tried to go through any of the gates that the red laser switch opened up, you would have gotten hit by traps if you were something other than a droid. But there's actually that button hidden behind it that opens up the middle gates that allows you to proceed through safely. This actually happens in a few different spots, but it's not too terribly common. Happens more often in quests than anything. But yeah, this one doesn't even have any prizes at the end, so sadness. That just means that we can finally head for the third branching path, which will lead straight to the boss. So let's go. Case 3 is nearly done. So for demonstration purposes, here's another example of causing these splines to actually split. It's really awkward to actually do this with a droid since you have to hit it with the third attack of your combo, but it's manageable if you know to fake a shot like that. And it's not like they're dangerous or anything. If you get a lot of them in one room, then sometimes they might get an attack off, but that's about it, since you only need to hit them just the once to send them back down. And the brand that we actually picked up is a pretty substantial power increase, for versus single enemies at least. Killing off most enemies in 2 attacks sounds good to me. If you do manage to find the level 2 weapons in Case 3, you get a pretty decent jump, and it should make the rest of the zone a little bit easier. But, yeah, that's mostly just luck, so don't rely on it. It's like goddamn mags. They will eat your everything and cause you to frequently have to go home. I mean, I don't particularly want to, because we're pretty much at the end of the zone. I'll go back then. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the last room before the boss gate. And yeah, with all the traps floating about in Case 3, you can understand how much of an annoyance this can be for a non-droid character. They do have their benefits, despite losing out on a lot of survivability. You know, the raw power tends to help them out a lot too. Even though the male human hunter is still stronger than the female droid, because balancing doesn't really happen with this game, but, you know, details. Okay, Phantasy. Find that time. Find the ways to spend the time waiting for this thing to split. The floating traps, for the most part, are not too much of an issue, but in later stages, and especially later difficulties, there are certain problems they can cause. Especially the ones that cause very bad status ailments. You do not want to get hit by a freeze trap in a very inopportune moment, to say the least. Because that gets rid of all invincibility frames when you take damage, so you can get easily cleaved down to 0 in no time. One more Gnarlily for the road? Sure, why not? I think that's 6, 7 in this run? I don't know. What is this months? Let's see. I don't think months is actually the proper term. This might have actually been over a year ago by now. Actually, it has been. Oh, God. I get things edited and uploaded in a swift fashion, yes, yes. I think the only other series that had this much delay on it was the Yoshi's Island videos. But either way, we found the boss gate, so time for more inventory management! Alright, with another inventory management session out of the way, let's get started on the boss. Meet Dayrole. This thing is pretty much the bane of the existence of most new players of this game, because this boss is kind of disproportionately hard compared to most of the other bosses in normal mode. It's kind of unusual, it has way too much HP for where it actually is positioned, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. This thing has a number of different attacks that'll end up looping through in a set pattern, so you can eventually learn it too. But then there's attacks like this, where it's easy to figure out where to dodge the first time, but the later ones I've never really bothered actually sorting out. I'm sure there's a perfectly safe place to stand to avoid the second fire of it as well, but oh well. So here's the thing. You can only really get good damage on Dayrelay when it hops up onto the raft. The first couple of times it does this comes quickly enough, but any successive time after that tends to take quite a while since it has a much longer part of its pattern to go through. When it's on the raft, it'll try to strike you with its tentacle antenna things 4 times. So just remember the timing on these ones. You can usually sneak in about 3 to 4 attacks and then wiggle away to cause it to attack nothing again. They do home on to your position, so you need to be moving to not get struck by them, and they do hurt quite a bit, so best try to avoid them. Also, that's a good demonstration of why the multi-hitting weapons are the best bet against this boss, because it's multi-segmented, and every single one of those hits actually count. Hunters in general definitely have the worst time against this boss, because quite frankly, most of the time you really just can't do anything to it. Your specialty is melee, and at this point in the game you're not going to have any weapons that can really deal with this thing when it's outside the raft. Rangers should be able to find at least one spread weapon by now, so they can actually hit multiple pieces when it's off the raft. They'll usually miss, but at least it's something. And forces, if they're lucky enough to get a refoy drop, then they'll have one heck of a good method of attacking it right there. Dayrelay likes to use these type of stacking attacks where you have to destroy various spikes before they detonate. It does help out a lot. You especially don't want to get hit by multiple of them at a time, or you may just get killed off immediately. One of the big reasons that Dayrelay ends up having so much health to whittle through is that you're not actually hitting his health directly until you knock the shells off of him. You can see some of them breaking off here. Also, there's a good example of what happens when you get too greedy with a number of attacks. But yes, you're not actually hitting Dayrelay's health bar until you've taken off the shells. Once you're hitting the actual bare pieces underneath, and then they'll actually start whittling him down. This is another reason why multi-segmented hitting weapons are actually really good, because you can attack it at the face, but not only does his skull there take forever to actually break off, but then you're only hitting one thing at a time, far less damage. So, you know, might not be a good idea to only bring in a saber or something. Either way, now that he's been on the raft twice, it's time to undergo the much slower pattern. After boarding the raft the second time, Dayrelay will go to the ceiling, causing rocks to fall and taking out the lights, which really doesn't do very much, but I guess it's there for visual effect. And during this time, he'll engage in a slightly more difficult attack pattern, slipping in a couple of new attacks. Now, the problem here is that he's pretty much not going to board the raft until much, much later, so get your pot shots in when you can with a gun or something. At least we have a few broken segments on him now, so we can get some regular damage in. Either way, his new attack is this laser, which will actually, you know, stand in a very awkward-looking fashion and start firing straight at you. The laser's damage is pretty hefty, but it's not really all that much worse than anything else, so it's more just a time-wasting attack. Yeah, the bosses in this game are not exactly the most stellar things, but Sega wasn't exactly too hot at those at this point in their career anyways. That said, the laser only kind of vaguely homes onto you, so if you just keep moving around, it's easy to dodge. Of course, he still has all of his other attacks available as well, such as this. Remember, just get rid of the one that's going to be showing up on the side that he's coming next to, and you should be able to dodge the spread attack just by standing here. But that's the thing. He doesn't necessarily follow up his attacks in the same way. Instead, he's off to do the lasers again, because time wasting. That's the thing about Dayrelay when you're fighting him for the first time, really. It's not so much that it's a difficult boss, it's that it's a very time-consuming boss that leaves a lot of room for making mistakes. If you get too greedy trying to pack in shots where you really shouldn't be and end up getting smacked by a few too many lasers, you might slowly start running out of supplies, or maybe get hit a little bit harder than you were expecting and end up dying. Thankfully, he does board the raft immediately after, the whole lights going out thing again. I have no idea why Pasme is trying to break his face off. I guess for demonstration purposes, maybe? But that's just gonna make this take even longer than it already was going to. It's like, was I just second guessing it? I'm really not sure why I'm actually bothering to break off the face. I mean, it does look kind of interesting beneath that skull mask, but at the same time, it's kind of pointless. Oh, me of over a year ago, what were you thinking? I mean, look at that. Not only have we been shooting that face constantly when it was firing lasers, but we also just attacked it for the entirety of one of the raft boardings. And it's still on. The Skull Mask actually has a lot more HP than all of his other segments, so it's, you know, generally not worth it to bother attacking, but, I mean, if you have a really good single-hitting weapon, then that'll work nicely, but yeah. That's what it looks like when you break the face off. It's gross and disgusting, and there's a worm face. Oh, this freaking boss. There's nothing all that redeemable about it, but at least we only have to slog through it once. At this point, his pattern honestly just loops. There's nothing actually new that it does. He'll just go through his attacks. You know, which type of explosion it chooses for these type of attacks will be random, but other than that, there's the spread fire, which is actually quite difficult to avoid because it moves in a diagonal pattern. All that good stuff. At least now we have the head blown off too, so pretty much anything we shoot's gonna do damage to it. That said, there's still a while to go. Also, my lunch is boiling over. 1 second. Alright, now that lunch has been taken care of. It's chili dogs if anybody's curious. Back to the fights. And the sad part is, despite the fact that we've done so much damage today, and broken off so many different pieces, he still has a ton of health left! Like seriously, this guy is just an HP sponge! Of course, if I'd stop getting greedy and getting myself smacked by the tentacle arm things, then, you know, it's probably go a little bit faster. Good job, me. Good job. The sad part is, this is also his second time on the raft for this time around, so guess what? It's time to go back to the lights off attack pattern. Which means more lasers, which means a long time before we actually get another attack in. With that though, there's really nothing else to really comment on this fight, so maybe I'll just let you enjoy the music for a little while. Good job, Phantasy. That stretch totally worked out for you, right? You didn't just get a boulder directly in your face? Oh, I mean, there's not really anything we can do from the back end on this guy, because none of the pieces are broken off, so just gotta stick to the front half. Maybe if we get lucky, he'll die off during this portion, just 2 shots to the face. Either way, enjoy some music for a bit, I guess. And with Dayrelay awkwardly sinking into the water, it indicates that he is finally dead. And I activated my Photon Blast just as the boss finish cutscene was going off, so it completely messes it up. Oh yeah. I just wanted to demonstrate this glitch since I have the Photon Blast handy. You can still watch the cutscene traversing there in the background, but it means that you're back to your normal view at the same time. Either way, the lights come back on, we get ourselves a level up, and a whole bunch of boxes appear. Since this is normal mode, we might actually get some sort of prize that'd be worthwhile. Hopefully we get at least one interesting thing. Of course, Dayrelay dropped his own thing as well, which is just going to be a star atomizer. But other than that, oh, looks like we did at least get one thing that I can demonstrate. Partisans serve the same purpose as swords. They hit multiple enemies at once in a wide sweep. They have less attack power than swords, but attack faster and have a larger range. There's a lot of times where using a partisan is a lot safer than using a sword, especially if it's before you're getting attack speed upgrades. So they're actually super handy to have, so best hang on to that one for now. With that though, the caves are finally finished after all this time. Anyway, get this footage posted eventually. But yeah, hopefully this one was enjoyed. Next time we'll be heading to the next area known as the mines, and yeah, I'll catch all you guys next time. See ya!